Every time my husband moved too slowly, one quick kick made him speed up. So why was I supposed to stop using the only thing that actually worked? He knew his endless delays drove me crazy, yet he kept dragging his feet and making me late. I did not see it as cruelty. I saw it as a solution to a problem he refused to fix. Maybe that sounds harsh, but hear the whole story before deciding I was wrong. You might understand why I believed he deserved every push. My name is Cassidy Hale. I am 38, and I direct events at the Grand Row Hotel, where 5 wasted minutes can cost thousands of dollars. I never kicked my husband because I enjoyed hurting him. I called it motivation because Owen could turn putting on his shoes into a full planning session. Of course, after every little push, he checked the time on his phone and gave me a slow nod, as if even being offended required preparation. By my birthday, I planned to prove in front of everyone that my method worked. Owen had always been careful. That was one of the reasons I married him. During our first year together, we visited an antique market every Sunday morning. I moved quickly through the rows, checking prices and deciding within seconds whether something was worth buying. Owen could stand at one table for 20 minutes, studying a cracked clock or an old wooden box. He asked sellers where objects came from. He examined every repair. Sometimes his patience found something I had missed. Once, he discovered an old photograph hidden inside a frame I had already rejected. Another time, he found a cedar bench that looked almost beyond repair. It had belonged to my father, and after he died, my mother had sold most of his belongings. Owen bought the bench without telling me. He spent 3 months restoring it in our garage, keeping every piece of original wood he could save. When he finally brought it inside, I cried against his shoulder. Back then, I called his patience love. 8 years into our marriage, it had become the thing that controlled every morning. Owen checked the front door twice before leaving. He returned upstairs to make sure the bathroom light was off. He studied parking signs as if one wrong word could send us to prison. If I asked where he wanted dinner, he needed to compare the drive, the wait time, and whether we had eaten there too recently. I made decisions for a living. Owen treated decisions like dangerous machines. The worst incident happened during the first important event I managed at the Grand Row. I had spent 6 months planning a charity dinner for nearly 400 guests. That morning, Owen thought he smelled gas near our garage. I told him it was probably the lawnmower container, but he refused to leave until he had checked the pipes and called the utility company. 23 minutes. I counted every one while standing beside the car in heels. The smell did come from the mower container. Nothing in the house was wrong. By the time we arrived, the opening remarks had started without me. My manager forgave the delay because the rest of the evening went well. I did not. Owen said he would rather make me late than risk leaving a gas leak behind. I told him there was always another risk for a man afraid to move. After that, his caution stopped feeling protective. It felt like a hand around my ankle. The first kick happened in the hotel parking garage on a Monday morning. I had a vendor meeting at 9. At 8:53, Owen was still standing beside our car, pulling the door handle for the second time. I told him it was locked. He said he wanted to be certain because my laptop was inside. I pressed the elevator button and watched the numbers descend. 8:54. 8:55. Owen checked the rear door. Something hot moved through my chest. I walked behind him and gave him a quick kick against the back of his leg. He stepped forward at once. I told him that was the fastest he had moved all morning. Trina was crossing the garage toward us. She had come early to help me prepare the meeting room, and she saw the whole thing. Instead of looking shocked, she laughed. She said I had finally discovered Owen's start button. Owen turned toward me. He did not raise his voice. He asked whether I seriously believed touching him like that was acceptable. I told him I had barely touched him and pointed out that it worked. We were moving. That was the goal. Owen asked what had changed between us. His question was soft, almost careful. I heard another attempt to turn a simple problem into a long emotional discussion. I told him nothing had changed except my patience. Trina laughed again and told Owen not to take everything so seriously. He looked at her, then at me. After a few seconds, He took out his phone and checked the time. I assumed he had finally understood why I was angry. We were 7 minutes behind schedule. That evening, I stopped at a discount store and found a red plastic stopwatch near the fitness equipment. I bought it as a joke. The next morning, I stood by the front door while Owen tied his shoes and clicked the button. He asked what I was doing. I told him I was collecting useful information. If he wanted me to stop pushing him, he could prove that he knew how to move without help. He finished one shoe, adjusted the tongue, then started the second. 1 minute and 46 seconds. I announced the time as if he had completed a race. Owen said marriage was not one of my hotel schedules. I answered that schedules existed because people became careless when nobody measured them. He stared at the stopwatch and asked whether humiliating him made me feel more in control. I called it motivation. Humiliation was a dramatic word for a small correction. Over the next several days, I timed the front door, the walk to the car, and how long Owen took to choose groceries. Every time he slowed down, I held up the stopwatch. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes I gave him a small push from behind. Owen became quieter, but he also moved faster. Results mattered. On Friday evening, Trina came over for drinks. She spotted the stopwatch on the hallway table and asked for a demonstration. Owen was upstairs checking whether he had unplugged the iron, even though neither of us remembered using it. Trina leaned close and said I should use the start button again when he came down. I looked at the staircase, pressed the stopwatch, and waited for my husband to fall behind. The red stopwatch stopped being a joke within a week, although I still called it one whenever Owen complained. Each morning, I stood near the front door and started the timer while he tied his shoes, checked the thermostat, and returned to make sure the back door was locked. 2 minutes, 38 seconds. Another minute because he thought the coffee maker might still be on. Of course, he said I was creating pressure where none was needed. I told him pressure was the only reason anything in our house happened on time. At the Grand Row, nobody received unlimited minutes to decide whether a tablecloth looked straight. Vendors moved when I spoke because hesitation cost money. Owen seemed to believe marriage protected him from the same rules. The kicks became a faster version of the stopwatch. If he fell several steps behind me in a parking lot, I gave him a quick push with my foot. If he stood too long comparing products, I moved him forward. It was never hard enough to injure him. That mattered to me. People hear the word kick and imagine something violent, but what I did was closer to pressing a button. One touch. Immediate movement. Problem solved. Owen did not agree. One Saturday, we went to a hardware store because he needed a replacement valve for the upstairs bathroom. I had another appointment afterward, so I reminded him before we entered that we had 20 minutes. He said he understood. 12 minutes later, he was still standing in the plumbing aisle with 2 nearly identical parts in his hands. He read the labels, turned them over, then searched for an employee because one package listed a slightly different pressure rating. I called his name from the end of the aisle. He raised one finger without looking at me, asking for another minute. 3 minutes passed, then 4. I walked back, told him we were leaving, and gave him a quick kick from behind when he continued examining the package. Owen stepped forward and dropped one of the valves. The plastic box struck the floor loudly enough for the cashier to look over. A man beside the paint section stopped pushing his cart. Owen bent down, placed both valves carefully on the shelf, and walked outside without buying either one. I followed him into the parking lot and asked why he was acting as if I had attacked him. Owen checked the time on his phone before answering. Then he told me it was the 7th time in 6 weeks. I laughed because the number sounded ridiculous. He had counted every small kick but still could not remember that I needed to leave the store by 11. Owen said he remembered both things. He asked whether I understood how strange it was that he could name 7 separate moments when his wife had used her foot to make him move. I told him a man who could remember 7 harmless corrections should also remember what caused them. Every incident began with him ignoring me. Every one ended with him finally moving. That was not abuse. It was cause and effect. Owen asked whether I would accept him doing the same thing to me when I took too long. I said the comparison did not work because I did not make people wait for no reason. He looked toward the store entrance and said, "I always found a way to make the rules fit only me." I heard resentment, not logic. On the drive home, he kept both hands on the steering wheel and said nothing else. That silence made me angrier than an argument would have. He could spend 20 minutes studying a valve, but would not spend 2 minutes admitting that his behavior exhausted me. Later that afternoon, Trina came by with a bottle of wine. I told her about the hardware store, expecting her to laugh at Owen's dramatic count. She did. 7 kicks in, 6 weeks sounded almost formal when she repeated it, like an exercise plan. She asked whether Owen wrote them on a calendar. I said he probably checked his phone because keeping records was easier than correcting himself. Trina wanted to see whether the start button still worked, so that evening, when we met several friends at a restaurant, she quietly opened her camera before Owen reached the entrance. He had stopped near the car because he wanted to check whether the windows were fully closed. I called for him twice. He continued walking around the vehicle. Trina smiled at me from beside the restaurant door. I went back, gave Owen a light kick, and told him our reservation would not wait. He moved immediately. Trina recorded the whole thing. At dinner, she uploaded the clip to our private group chat with the caption, "Owen's start button still works." Laughing reactions appeared within seconds. Mason Reed, my assistant director at the hotel, added that every team needed an emergency speed setting. Mason was everything Owen was not. He answered questions before people finished asking them. If a vendor failed, he replaced them. If a problem appeared, he chose a solution and adjusted later. Working beside him reminded me how easy life could be around a man who did not need time to prepare for every possible outcome. I showed Owen the group chat when we got home because I wanted him to see that nobody considered the video serious. He asked why humiliating him in front of friends made the behavior more acceptable. I told him people were laughing because they recognized the truth. He moved slowly. I found a method that worked. Owen asked me to delete the video. I refused because asking me to hide it only proved he cared more about appearances than improvement. At the hotel the next day, Mason solved a seating problem in under 5 minutes after Owen had spent the entire morning comparing options for a new bathroom valve. I told Owen about it over dinner and said working beside Mason showed me how quickly competent men made decisions. Owen set down his fork. He asked whether I understood what it sounded like when I compared my husband to another man after sharing a video of myself kicking him. I told him confidence did not fear comparison. He replied that respect should not require competition. Then he checked the time on his phone and left the table. A few nights later, Trina played the start button video during dinner at Leah's house. My friends laughed again. Mason, who had joined us after work, said Owen should be grateful I had created an efficient system. Owen's oldest friend Grant watched the clip but kept his hands around his glass. He did not laugh, yet he said nothing because he hated conflict and had spent years avoiding problems inside other people's marriages. Leah also remained silent. Her eyes followed Owen when he stood and carried his plate to the sink. I took their silence as agreement. The joke had become part of who we were as a couple, and Owen would eventually learn to laugh with everyone else. My 39th birthday was supposed to remind everyone why I was good at my job. I planned the celebration inside the Grand Ro's largest ballroom, with a live musician near the windows and gold candles across every table. Nearly 80 people attended, including hotel executives, relatives, old friends, and several employees who worked under me. I had built the schedule down to the minute. Dinner at 7. Speeches at 8:15. Cake at 8:40. Nothing was going to run late on my birthday. Owen arrived before most of the guests because I had given him a list of tasks. He checked the emergency exits, helped Nina test the lights, and spent almost 10 minutes adjusting one loose table leg. Of course, he believed preventing a possible problem mattered more than following my schedule. Mason solved 3 real problems while Owen studied one chair. A musician arrived without the correct cable, and Mason found a replacement in 4 minutes. The florist placed 2 arrangements at the wrong tables, and he moved them before I finished greeting Grant. Working beside Mason made Owen's slowness look worse. One man saw what needed to happen and acted. The other waited until every detail felt safe. Trina noticed the red stopwatch inside my purse and asked whether I planned to use the start button during the party. I told her I would not need it if Owen behaved like an adult. She laughed and said everyone secretly hoped he would give us a demonstration. I liked that the joke had become familiar. People knew what it meant. Owen was slow. I corrected him. Life continued. The cake was the most important part of the evening. It had 3 white tiers with gold decoration and small sugar flowers along the edges. I had asked the pastry team to keep it in the service kitchen until the birthday song began. Owen was supposed to carry it through the narrow corridor and place it on the center table. He had strong hands, and I wanted him included in the entrance. More importantly, I wanted one photograph that made us look like a successful couple again. At 8:38, I found him in the service corridor studying the base of the cake stand. The air smelled of warm icing and industrial floor cleaner. He pressed one side of the stand, then asked a server whether the lower tier had shifted during delivery. I told him it was fine. He said the weight looked uneven. I reminded him that the song would begin in 2 minutes. Owen asked for another set of hands. I said 2 people carrying it would ruin the entrance photographs. He checked the path to the ballroom and asked whether I could move several guests away from the doorway. I heard another delay being built in front of me. One question became another. One check became 3. I took the red stopwatch from my purse and held it where he could see it. Owen looked at the stopwatch, then at me. He asked whether I was serious. I told him 30 seconds was more than enough time to carry a cake across one room. The musician began the first notes of the birthday song. Nina raised her professional camera. Trina stood near the ballroom entrance with her phone already recording. Owen lifted the cake. He moved carefully through the corridor, keeping both hands beneath the stand. The lower tier shifted slightly when he crossed the metal strip between the corridor and the ballroom. He stopped. I clicked the stopwatch. 10 seconds. Guests turned toward us and began singing. Owen asked me to clear the path instead of timing him. I moved one chair, but several people still stood near the center table. He took another step. 15 seconds. I told him to move faster. He said the cake was leaning. 21 seconds. Trina laughed behind her phone and called out that Owen needed his start button. A few people near her laughed too. That gave me permission. I walked behind him and told him one final time to hurry. Owen continued at the same careful pace. I gave him a sharp kick from behind. His right foot moved forward suddenly. The cake tilted toward the floor. Someone near the table shouted. Owen twisted his body, caught the edge of the stand against his chest, and kept all 3 tiers upright. A line of icing broke near the bottom, but the cake did not fall. The room released one nervous sound, half laughter and half surprise. Trina laughed louder than anyone. I raised the stopwatch and announced that the start button still worked. Several guests joined in because I was smiling and the cake was safe. Mason clapped. One of my employees covered her mouth, then lowered her hand when she saw me looking. Owen placed the cake on the table. He did not laugh. He did not tell me I had embarrassed him. Instead, he took out his phone and checked the time. 8:41 and 12 seconds. Even after nearly dropping my birthday cake, he was still thinking about minutes. I took the microphone and told everyone that 8 years of marriage had taught me one useful lesson. Some husbands responded to communication. Mine responded to physical motivation. The laughter came again, but it was thinner. Owen looked toward Nina and asked her to send him the complete, unedited recording from the corridor and ballroom. Nina lowered her camera and asked whether he wanted the full birthday video or only the cake entrance. Owen said he wanted everything from the moment he lifted the stand. I assumed he wanted proof that he had saved the cake. Owen always needed recognition for avoiding dangers he had exaggerated first. He cut the first piece, placed it on my plate, and left the ballroom before the speeches ended. I told the guests he needed time to recover from moving faster than usual. Trina laughed, but Leah did not. Grant approached me near the gift table and asked whether Owen was comfortable with the joke. I said my husband understood how I motivated people. Grant looked toward the empty doorway and said nothing. For 1 second, The silence around him made the ballroom feel colder. I fixed it by calling everyone back for photographs. Before midnight, I posted Trina's video online with the caption, "8 years of marriage and I finally found his speed setting." The first laughing reactions appeared within a minute. By the time I went to bed, the clip had been shared 37 times. Owen was sleeping in the guest room, but I considered that another slow protest he would eventually finish. The birthday video kept spreading after the party, but not in the way I expected. At first, most reactions were laughing faces and comments about married life. Then, strangers began asking why I thought kicking my husband was funny. One woman wrote that Owen's expression after saving the cake did not look playful. Another asked whether I would laugh if a man did the same thing to his wife. I deleted the worst comments and told myself people online searched for reasons to be offended. They had seen 12 seconds. They had not lived through 11 years of waiting for Owen to finish checking doors, reading instructions, and preparing for risks that existed mostly in his head. Of course, nobody wanted that context because context was slower than outrage. At home, Owen moved into the guest room. He carried his clothes down the hallway one careful stack at a time, which annoyed me because even his protest took nearly an hour. I told him sleeping separately would only make the birthday incident look more serious. He said it had been serious before anyone saw it. Then he checked the time on his phone and placed it face down on the dresser. I asked whether he planned to count every night we slept apart too. Owen said he had stopped counting nights. He was counting the times I had ignored a clear request to stop touching him that way. I told him he was collecting small moments because the full marriage did not support his version. Owen looked at me and began naming the pattern. The parking garage, the hardware store, the restaurant entrance, Leah's dinner, Mark's cookout, our hallway, the birthday cake. He did not raise his voice. That made the list sound rehearsed, as if he had spent more time organizing complaints than fixing the problem that caused them. I told him we could compromise. I would stop doing it around strangers and co-workers, but inside our home or around close friends, he needed to accept that I sometimes required a faster response. Owen asked whether I heard myself. I said marriage involved meeting each other halfway. He replied that the halfway point between kicking someone and not kicking them was not a compromise. His boundary was simple. I did not get to use my foot to control his body anywhere. I accused him of choosing dramatic language because it made him sound like a victim. He said I had chosen the action, not the language. The next evening, Leah came to our house without calling first. She found me answering work emails at the dining table while Owen sat in the room with the cedar bench. Leah did not ask whether she could speak privately. She said she had watched the complete birthday recording Nina sent to the family. I told her the public clip already showed what happened. Leah said the public clip did not include Owen, asking me to clear the path or telling me the cake was unstable. It did not show him asking me to stop before I kicked him. I reminded her that the cake survived. Leah asked why I kept discussing the cake when her brother was the person I had humiliated. Then she listed incidents I had not known she remembered. The kick near the restaurant. The shove at Mark's cookout. The time I pushed Owen forward in our hallway while Trina timed him. The hardware store cashier. I asked how she knew about the store because she had not been there. Leah said people had begun sending Owen recordings and messages after my birthday post. Apparently, the video gave everyone permission to remember. I said Owen was building a campaign against me instead of speaking to me directly. Leah told me he had spoken every time he asked me to stop. I called that complaining, not communication. She stared at me for several seconds, then went into the other room to say goodbye to him. I followed because I did not like conversations continuing outside my control. Owen was sitting beside the cedar bench with one hand resting on the wood my father had once touched. His shoulders were bent, and he was studying a repaired corner where two pieces met. For a second, I remembered the 3 months he had spent restoring it. He had refused to replace the damaged side because he said original things deserved more effort before someone threw them away. The thought came too close to something uncomfortable. Then I noticed the red stopwatch on the nearby table. I decided he had arranged the scene to make me feel guilty. Leah left without hugging me. That was new. At work, people also became careful. Employees who once laughed when I joked about Owen now smiled without adding anything. Mason stopped mentioning the start button. When I asked whether the birthday clip had become a problem, he said online attention usually disappeared when people stopped feeding it. I reminded him that he had clapped in the ballroom. Mason said he had clapped because the cake had not fallen. That was not how I remembered it, but I let the difference go. 2 days later, I used Owen's laptop to find an insurance document. A folder was open on the screen with dates instead of titles. Parking garage. Hardware store. Restaurant. Birthday ballroom. Each folder contained video files, screenshots, or short notes. For several seconds, the pattern looked different when it was arranged in straight lines. Not funny moments spread across a marriage. A record. I opened the parking garage folder and saw a timestamp matching the morning of the first kick. My hand stayed on the trackpad. Then I closed the laptop. Anyone could make a marriage look cruel by cutting away the good hours between bad seconds. Owen was an inspector. Of course, he organized everything like an investigation. That did not make his interpretation correct. The following afternoon, I saw him inside the hotel editing suite with Nina Patel. Nina was the videographer who had recorded my birthday. She handed Owen a small black storage drive and showed him something on a monitor. When I entered, Nina minimized the window. Owen checked the time on his phone before putting the drive in his pocket. I asked whether they were making another version of the birthday video. Nina said Owen had requested original files, and that hotel policy allowed subjects in recorded footage to receive copies. Her formal tone irritated me. I told Owen that if he wanted an apology video, he should speak to me instead of editing one in secret. He said the video was not an apology. I assumed he meant he wanted me to apologize publicly, which was never going to happen. That evening, Trina took 4 hours to answer a message she normally would have answered in 4 minutes. She said work had been busy and ignored my question about whether people were overreacting. The silence around me was becoming organized, but I still had the hotel. Grant proved that the next morning when he announced I would receive the Operational Leadership Award at the company banquet. Staff applauded. Mason shook my hand. Nina recorded the announcement. I looked across the room at Owen, who had come to inspect a damaged service door. He gave me no smile. He only checked the time. The award would put me back in front of the same people who had started judging 12 seconds of my marriage, and this time I would control the entire presentation. The Operational Leadership Award arrived at the exact moment I needed it. For several days, people had treated me as if 12 seconds from my birthday explained my entire marriage. Now the Grand Row was preparing to honor me for the quality those same people criticized. I moved faster than others. I demanded results. I did not allow delays to become excuses. The award proved those qualities were leadership, not cruelty. I decided to use the attention instead of hiding from it. My first post was simple. I wrote that strong women were often called controlling when they expected adults to keep up with them. Then I reposted Trina's restaurant video, the clip from our hallway, and the birthday cake entrance. I edited them into one short montage titled How I Keep My Husband Moving. In every clip, Owen moved faster after I touched him. That was the point. I removed the long pauses before each moment because nobody needed to watch him check a lock twice or compare the same products for 10 minutes. I also removed the parts where he complained afterward. Complaints did not explain why the method worked. They only slowed the video. The montage received more attention than the original birthday post. Some people laughed. Others called it humiliating. I answered only the comments that supported me because arguing with strangers gave them importance. At work, several employees shared the video in private chats. I knew because Mason showed me one conversation where a banquet server called the clips uncomfortable. Mason said people would forget once the award ceremony gave them something new to discuss. He was right. Public attention moved quickly when someone knew how to direct it. Grant called me into his office 2 days later. He had printed the banquet schedule and placed my speech between the annual revenue report and the final dinner service. 8 minutes. I asked for 12. Grant said 8 was enough to accept an award. I told him I planned to speak about leadership, urgency, and the pressure placed on women who refused to lower standards. Grant studied me before saying the award recognized my professional results, not my marriage. I said my marriage had become part of the public discussion because people refused to separate direct leadership from personal weakness. Grant asked whether Owen had agreed to the new montage. I told him Owen had appeared in every clip and knew the videos existed. Grant repeated the word agreed. I said husbands did not usually sign approval forms before wives posted family jokes. He looked down at the schedule and told me the ceremony would show how the situation landed. I understood that as a warning to make my speech strong enough. The banquet needed an introduction video before I walked onto the stage. Normally, Nina created those videos from company photographs, employee interviews, and event footage. I wanted something more personal. Owen had spent years beside me while I built my career, even if he never understood its pace. A tribute from him would prove that our marriage was stronger than one argument. It would also show everyone that he accepted my version of the joke. I found him in the guest room, folding shirts with the same careful attention he gave everything. I told him I wanted him to create the video. It should include photographs from our marriage, clips from my best events, and a message about how my determination had helped both of us. Owen asked why I wanted him to make it instead of Nina. I said a husband's voice carried more weight than an employee's. He checked the time on his phone. Then he agreed. His answer came so easily that I almost laughed. Weeks of silence, separate bedrooms, and dramatic lists had ended with one request. Owen had finally understood that supporting me publicly was the only way to repair the attention around us. I gave him access to the photographs and told Nina to help with the technical work. Over the next week, Owen spent several evenings at the hotel editing suite. He did not show me drafts, but I assumed he wanted the final video to be a surprise. Nina became more formal whenever I asked about it. She said Owen had made clear decisions about the structure and did not need my approval until the ceremony. That sounded unlike him. Owen usually needed 3 discussions before choosing a restaurant. I decided the pressure had improved him. The night before the banquet, he asked me to meet him near the loading dock after work. The air smelled of rain and cardboard from the delivery area. Owen stood beside a stack of folded banquet chairs with the red stopwatch in his hand. He asked me to delete the montage before the ceremony and tell the guests that he had repeatedly asked me to stop kicking him. His voice was calm, final. I told him the montage showed our real marriage, not the weak version he wanted people to pity. Owen said it showed only the seconds I selected. I replied that he had forced me to carry every deadline alone. Simple decisions became investigations. Leaving the house required checks. Buying one part required comparisons. He had made me responsible for moving our entire life forward because he refused to move without certainty. Owen did not deny it. He said his hesitation had exhausted me and that he had often confused caution with responsibility. Then he asked whether his flaw gave me permission to use his body as entertainment. I said a stronger husband would have corrected the problem before his wife needed to find a method. Owen looked at the stopwatch and checked the time on his phone. I expected him to argue. Instead, he said he would make sure the banquet saw the full version. I assumed he meant the complete tribute instead of my short montage. I told him that was exactly what I wanted. When he became quieter, I became louder. I said he would sit at my table, play the video, and show everyone that our marriage was not controlled by strangers online. Owen placed the stopwatch in his coat pocket and said he would be there. On the morning of the banquet, Trina did not answer my message asking where she wanted to sit. Her name was missing from the confirmed seating chart. I decided she was jealous because the award had turned my worst week into a professional victory. That evening, the ballroom filled with hotel executives and department managers. Nina stood beside the projector. Mason sat near Grant. Owen waited close to the stage with the red stopwatch in his hand. When my name was announced, I walked toward the microphone, certain my husband was finally ready to prove that I had been right. Owen walked onto the stage after my speech and placed the red stopwatch beside the microphone. Then he checked the time on his phone. I smiled because I recognized the habit. Owen asked the room why a man known for moving slowly always recorded the exact second after his wife kicked him. The lights lowered. The tribute video began with the parking garage, then the hardware store, the restaurant, our hallway, and my birthday. Every clip included Owen asking me to stop. Every timestamp matched the moments he had checked his phone. My edited montage appeared beside the original footage, showing exactly what I had removed. Nobody laughed. I reached for my glass, but my hand stayed around the stem. Grant asked whether Owen had clearly told me to stop. Nina answered that the unedited recordings showed he had. I said the kicks never injured him, and that urgency was part of leadership. Mason stood, said he had never supported physical humiliation, and moved to another table. Trina's chair was empty. Owen said the divorce petition had been filed and I would receive instructions for collecting my belongings. Then he picked up the stopwatch and walked away before I finished explaining myself. I moved into an extended stay room across town. My personal account covered fewer expenses than I expected. Leah and most of our mutual friends stopped answering my calls. Mason took temporary control of my event schedule. The complete banquet video replaced my edited version everywhere it had been shared. I believed the fastest person always controlled where everyone went. Owen proved that slow people still reached the door. They simply made certain it closed behind them. The red stopwatch remained on the podium after the ballroom emptied. I spent 8 years kicking Owen to make him move, and he used every second to leave me.